Have you ever wondered why a man lingers after the spark of novelty has cooled, why he returns as if something older than desire keeps calling him back? Some women carry a field around them that cannot be touched by hands, a field made of self-respect, measured silence, and unbending worth. When a man is hooked on that field, he isn't chasing skin, he's orbiting soul. The body is a door, yes, but the house he wants is the one lit from within. In Jungian language, his anima stirs and begins to speak, something in him recognizes a blueprint of wholeness he forgot he was missing. Watch the difference in his eyes. Lust devours, reverence observes. Appetite rushes, devotion slows. When you speak, he listens for the words beneath the words, the pauses, the grounded cadence, the refusal to be hurried. If your silence enters the room first, he leans into it rather than trying to shatter it. A man addicted to spirit does not fear quiet, because the quiet is where he meets himself. In that hush, projections crack. He sees the outline of his own shadow, the reflex to own what he admires, the ego that pretends closeness equals control, and he chooses not to act from it. Notice what happens when you say no. The immature psyche collapses into bargaining or blame. The mature one bows to reality like a Stoic facing weather. Seneca would say virtue is proven in restraint, not conquest. So he regulates his breath, not your choices. He does not punish distance, he respects it. He does not stalk your availability, he strengthens his purpose. The center of gravity shifts from your body to his own character, and strangely, that shift binds him to you more fiercely, because what he wants most is the world that shapes your decisions, not the permissions he can extract. Another sign lives in the way he holds longing. Many men chase relief from tension, this one learns to sit inside the ache without demanding a fix. He treats desire as a teacher, not a tyrant. Jung called this inner alchemy, the refining of base impulse into gold through containment. If you withdraw for a week to tend your life, he does not spiral into accusation, he tends his life too. He studies. He serves. He orders his world so that when you return, you meet a man who has been deepening, not drowning. There is also the matter of gaze. The body hunter scans for proofs of access, compliance, closeness, quick availability. The spirit seeker watches for coherence. Do words and actions match? Do values hold under pressure? Does your laughter arise from freedom rather than performance? He is magnetized by your integrative power, the way you can be warm without surrendering dignity, open without leaking self. That power disturbs his ego because it cannot be managed, it can only be met. Drawn beyond technique, he finds himself studying meaning, not methods. Projection fades in stages. At first he may mistake you for the cure to his emptiness. Then he learns the emptiness is his to metabolize. When he stops turning you into a fantasy and begins meeting you as a person, the intoxication changes flavor, from fever to clarity. He asks questions that honor your inner life, what strengthens you, what you are building, what you refuse to negotiate. One by one, the myths of possession die, that touching equals knowing, that proximity equals intimacy, that frequency equals depth. If a man is addicted to your spirit, your limits awaken his masculinity instead of wounding it. Your refusal to collapse becomes an initiation. He steps into structure, not as a jail but as a road. Marcus Aurelius would call it alignment with nature, desire serving purpose. He becomes precise with his word and careful with time. He tells the truth quickly. He stops performing availability he cannot sustain. He is not chasing the high of early chemistry, he is building the vessel that can carry devotion through ordinary days. This fixation shows itself most clearly when you disappear from his attention economy. If you post less, he does not seek spectacle, he seeks conversation. If you are less responsive, he does not flood you with panic, he stabilizes. Your absence does not provoke conquest fantasies, it summons service. He asks what supports your clarity and contributes to it without demanding a receipt. He is not negotiating for access, he is investing in reality, and reality is the only ground on which sacred love can stand. This is how spirit addiction begins, through reverence, restraint, and a relentless turn toward what is real. If you pay attention, you will feel it before he ever names it. It reveals itself in how he meets your solitude. A man bound to flesh resents the door you close for reflection, a man bound to spirit guards that door. He recognizes that your solitude is not distance from him but fidelity to yourself, and fidelity to yourself is the oxygen of the bond. He does not pry for reassurance every hour, he accepts the mystery of intervals. Jung would call this reverence for the numinous, the capacity to stand before what is larger than one's ego without grasping. The grasping man wants constant proof, the reverent man allows evidence to arrive through consistency over time, through the plain reliability of presence that does not perform. Watch how he handles jealousy when your light draws attention. The ego's quick move is to police, to shame, to create a punishment economy where warmth must be purchased with anxiety. But the man who is learning you at the level of soul treats jealousy as a mirror, not a weapon. He follows the thread back into old rooms, the mother he could not please, the father whose praise had conditions, the boyhood vows that turned love into a contest. He names the shadow instead of making you carry it. You are not deputized to manage his fear, he becomes the steward of his own storm. His attention shifts from extraction to initiation. Extraction takes and demands, initiation creates capacity. He is less interested in how close he can get, more interested in what he must become to be worthy of closeness. That change shows up in small, unfamous habits, the way he ends what he cannot continue, the way he speaks carefully about absent people, the way he refuses to trade in gossip because he wants a world safe for truth. The erotic charge does not vanish, it becomes held, stronger, cleaner, more devastating precisely because it is not constantly spent. He can sit next to you without needing to prove a thing. He can touch you without making your body a ledger. Conflict becomes a reveal rather than a verdict. The fragile psyche interprets friction as rejection, the sturdy psyche treats friction as information. He does not accuse you of hardness when you set a boundary, he checks the boundary against his values and adjusts. If a pattern of misattunement appears, he studies the pattern. He knows that love without repair is theater. Epictetus would say discipline begins with what is within control, breath, word, response. So he measures his words. He watches his tone. He returns after cooling, not as an apology machine performing contrition, but as a man who has made a decision about how he wants to live. You will notice his curiosity change shape. He asks about your interior choreography, what calms your nervous system, which commitments matter even when they are inconvenient, how you keep your heart clean in a culture that profits from resentment. He does not romanticize your pain, he respects the price you paid for wisdom. If you say you need 3 days with your phone quiet, he plans accordingly. He does not frame your center as attitude, he treats it as law. The more he witnesses your order, the less he is tempted to test it. It is not fear that restrains him, it is devotion to something exact and beautiful. There is a recalibration of pace. He stops rushing milestones to sedate uncertainty. He learns the difference between momentum and speed. Momentum is earned through alignment, calls when promised, exits when necessary, returns without fanfare. He resists the pressure to dazzle you because he understands that dazzle is debt, it must be serviced with escalation. Instead, he aims for the kind of steadiness that allows your guard to rest. A woman cannot relax into a man who cannot regulate himself. When self-regulation appears, ease follows, and ease is more intoxicating than spectacle. He edits his inputs. Not to impress you, but to protect the quality of his attention. The shows that numb, the friendships that orbit cynicism, the habits that spike and crash, he notices how they scatter him and chooses coherence. He remembers that attention is worship, and he wants to worship what he can keep. Marcus Aurelius would call it pruning the inner citadel. He learns to be bored in noble ways, reading, building, training, praying, walking. Boredom without anesthesia births depth, and depth is the only soil that can hold your complexity without calling it too much. He honors your name in rooms you do not enter. This is a quiet but unambiguous sign. The body hunter wants credit for public affection, the spirit-devoted man protects your dignity when praise yields no advantage. He does not turn your private story into content. He does not recruit the crowd as witness against you. He does not leak your tenderness to inflate his standing. Devotion is measured by how a man behaves off-stage. Off-stage, he is clean. He begins to treat your values like constellations rather than decorations. The surface charms that once hypnotized him, style, fragrance, the choreography of flirting, fade beside the deeper orbits you keep, your morning rituals, the friends you honor, the work you refuse to betray. He wants to understand the creed you live by, not to mimic it for approval, but to meet you at the altitude where your choices are made. Jung spoke of individuation as a marriage within the soul. He senses that your yes and no are vows in that inner marriage, and he refuses to trespass. Your standards stop being obstacles and become coordinates. Confession becomes safer with him because he does not convert your tenderness into leverage. A man devoted to the body collects stories to hold power, a man devoted to the spirit holds stories like glass. He does not repeat your pain for social currency. He does not file your secrets as ammunition for future debate. Where lesser men become archivists of grievance, he becomes a guardian of meaning. You are not punished for being human. You are witnessed, and where repair is needed, it is offered without ceremony or scorekeeping. His relationship to sexuality shifts from consumption to creation. Desire stops being a drain and becomes a current that powers his life. When distance or timing asks for abstinence, he does not collapse into sulking or seek substitutes, he transfigures charge into craft, training, service, prayer. This is the ancient art of sublimation, eros fueling logos. The impulse to take becomes the discipline to build. He learns that attraction is an energy to be stewarded, not a problem to be solved, and that stewardship, paradoxically, intensifies the magnetism rather than dulling it. He meets crisis like a harbor, not a spotlight. When storms arrive, he does not audition for the role of savior nor vanish to avoid responsibility. He stands where competence is needed and refuses to overreach where autonomy must be preserved. Stoic in the truest sense, he focuses on what is his to control: clarity, logistics, presence, tone. He understands that calm is not silence, it is pressure organized into action. In his steadiness, your nervous system finds a place to rest, not because he rescues you, but because he refuses to add chaos to the room. Your edge does not frighten him. He welcomes the masculine line in you, the sword of discernment, the structure of schedule, the refusal to tolerate disrespect, because his inner feminine has begun to speak. The anima within him is no longer a fantasy projection, it becomes a counselor. Where earlier he may have been threatened by your decisiveness, now he sees its beauty. Where he once confused softness with weakness, he recognizes it as power restrained. The polarity between you becomes play, not a battlefield. Dominance gives way to dance. He becomes fluent in repair. Not the performative apologies that beg for instant absolution, but the slow grammar of change, naming the pattern, altering a microbehavior, proving consistency over weeks. He does not weaponize time by rushing reconciliation to end his discomfort, he earns peace by doing the dull, holy repetitions that rebuild trust. Marcus Aurelius would call it living according to nature, repetition forging character. Your body registers these repetitions as safety, your spirit recognizes them as reverence. Mystery remains intact around you because he refuses interrogation. He is curious without being invasive, attentive without surveillance. He knows that intimacy requires the unknown to breathe, and so he leaves room for your private covenants with yourself and with the sacred. Where many try to collapse the space between questions and answers, he lets the echo linger. In that echo, desire matures. In that patience, respect grows roots. He understands that titles, declarations, public signals, useful as they are, cannot replace the quiet proof of how two people move when no one is watching. He invests in your mission. Not as a patron seeking ownership, but as a companion honoring purpose. If your work requires silence, he protects it. If your craft needs tools, he contributes without keeping receipts. If your calling demands travel, he helps plan with a clear head. He does not ask your future to shrink to fit his comfort. The archetype at play here is the king rightly ordered. He builds a domain where the queen's sovereignty can flourish, because her flourishing is the health of the realm. And perhaps the clearest sign, your body is no longer a battlefield where he tries to win, it is a sanctuary he thanks for access. Gratitude replaces entitlement. Presence replaces performance. The hunger that once pushed for possession becomes a reverence that longs to be worthy. In that shift, both of you rise. The bond ceases to be a trade of needs and becomes a house for meaning, built brick by brick from truth, boundary, and a kind of desire that makes two people more themselves, not less. He starts to notice symbols that circle you both, not as superstitions but as patterns the unconscious keeps repeating. A hawk on the morning run. A melody that follows you into different rooms. The same phrase surfacing from unrelated mouths. He does not assign mystical obligation to these occurrences, yet he honors the way meaning arranges itself when two lives begin to synchronize. Jung would call it synchronicity, acausal, mysterious, but potent. The body chaser shrugs and scrolls. The spirit-addicted man pauses, asks what the pattern demands from his character, not what it promises to his hunger. He treats the symbol as a summons to depth. You will notice that he does not compete with your calling. Lesser devotion tries to outshine a woman's purpose because it confuses admiration with displacement. He does the opposite. He widens the frame so your vocation can breathe. If your work draws you into late nights, he arranges support without sulking. If your spiritual practice requires dawn silence, he learns to share the house with quiet rituals rather than banging pots for attention. He wants to be a shelter that does not erase you. The masculine in him stops treating love as a portal to comfort and treats it as an altar to service. His sense of humor matures. He sheds the sarcasm that armors insecurity and chooses laughter that cleans the air. Jokes stop targeting your edges and start targeting his own ego. He can mock his compulsions without humiliation because shame is no longer steering the car. The adolescent impulse to test your sensitivity for sport gives way to reverence for your nervous system. He understands the sacredness of your thresholds. When you say, "That topic is not for play," he hears the bell and steps back. Financial integrity enters the room. Not performative generosity purchased on credit, not grand gestures designed to buy emotional compliance, but clarity. He pays what he owes. He tells the truth about limits. He lays out plans that include you without binding you. Money, once a stage for dominance, becomes a tool for building. This shift, though hardly glamorous, binds him to your spirit because it speaks the language of reality. Eros without reality burns out. Eros tethered to honesty endures. He does not turn your differences into a trial. Many couples confuse compatibility with sameness and then try to sandpaper each other into mirrors. He decides to be bilingual, fluent in his temperament and fluent in yours. If you move by intuition, he learns the weather patterns of your inner world. If he moves by structure, he teaches you the calendar without demanding you worship it. The aim is not compromise as loss, it is complementarity as art. The dance becomes the point. Each keeps form while finding harmony. There is a tenderness in his attention to your body that has little to do with access. He notices fatigue before performance. He asks about sleep before plans. He applauds rest without calling it laziness. When your body says, no, he believes it the first time. When it says, yes, he treats it like a loan from the sacred, not a trophy. This reverence unhooks the old cultural scripts that trained women to perform endurance. Your physiology begins to trust the space. And trust is the deepest aphrodisiac, because safety lets desire tell the truth. The shadow work does not stop once the romance stabilizes. He keeps turning toward the rooms he avoided. Rage he learned from a father who punished softness. People-pleasing he learned from a mother who feared abandonment. The savior script that makes him inflate during crisis and deflate after. He tracks these cycles as a scientist tracks weather, without self-hatred, without denial. He invites counsel, therapy, brotherhood, teachers who can challenge his blind spots without courting his approval. He is no longer seduced by the myth of the lone wolf. He builds a tribe that keeps him honest because your spirit deserves a man audited by reality. Your absence becomes a test he passes deliberately. Business trips, busy seasons, creative caves, he answers them with fidelity that is boring in the best way. He does not cultivate backup attention to numb the ache. He eats his hunger like bread and works. He knows that the nervous system stores evidence. He wants yours to store calm. So he sends a message when promised, not a flood when guilty. He returns when planned, not with excuses but with presence. Over time, the reliability becomes erotic, because nothing is sexier to a woman's spirit than a man who can be trusted. He relinquishes possession as a goal. The language shifts from have to honor, from get to give, from win to be worthy. Possession is the dream of an ego afraid of loss, worthiness is the practice of a soul committed to growth. He will still falter. He will still be human. But even his mistakes look different. They are owned quickly, repaired concretely, and used as fuel for maturation rather than as theater for dramatic reconciliations. He is not performing the role of a good man, he is becoming one in the dark where applause cannot reach. Perhaps most telling is the way he blesses what he cannot control. Your friendships. Your lineage. Your private dialogues with God. He does not insert himself as mediator between you and the sacred. He removes his shoes where your mysteries begin. In that reverence, desire becomes clean. In that humility, love stops being a transaction and becomes a pilgrimage, two travelers carrying light, meeting at dusk, telling the day's truth without fear, then sleeping without suspicion. This is the addiction of spirit, not a fevered need, but a chosen loyalty to what makes two people larger than they were yesterday. There comes a pivot where devotion ceases to orbit you as a sun and begins to radiate from him as a center. The obsession that once threatened to swallow both of you becomes an inner engine that makes him truer, quieter, clean. He discovers that proximity to your spirit is not earned by performance but by integrity repeated in private. The bond matures because it is no longer a negotiation with your nervous system, it is a covenant with reality. Individuation is the word Jung used for this, the long pilgrimage from imitation to essence. A man who has tasted it will not beg for reassurance from your mirror, he will polish his own until it tells the truth. You will feel the atmosphere change around choices that used to agitate him. A cancelled plan doesn't trigger a trial, it reveals his capacity to hold disappointment without retaliation. Silence between messages no longer reads as threat, it becomes a Sabbath for two separate souls. Attention stops being currency and becomes gift. Where once he kept score, now he keeps rhythm, steady, human, imperfect, dependable. The move from transaction to offering is the fragrance of spiritual addiction, it does not demand proof because it has learned to trust process. Your radiance is no longer a resource to be mined, it is a temple to be respected. He does not worship you, he worships the good that shaped you, and that worship straightens his spine. His masculinity becomes containment rather than control, walls that keep weather out, not gates that keep you in. He stakes his desire to the ground of character. Stoic spoke of ruling the inner republic, he understands that empire begins with the tongue, the calendar, the promise made at 9 p.m. on a tired Thursday. He keeps such small promises until the architecture of his life can hold the weight of love without collapse. You are invited, but not required, to rest. This is the quiet revolution. Many women have learned to negotiate safety through overperformance, responding instantly, laughing to smooth, smiling to soothe, shrinking to fit. In the field of a man devoted at the level of soul, those defenses are returned to you like weapons at the door of a sanctuary. You may keep them if you wish, you do not need them. Safety is not demanded, it is generated by coherence. And because safety exists, desire can tell the truth, not the story of fear. He meets your boundaries as altars, not obstacles. Limits stop being tests and become teachings. When your body says stop, he treats the word as sacred space. When your purpose says go, he packs provisions without resentment. He does not allow you, language of ownership has left his mouth. He aligns with you or he steps aside with dignity. The paradox becomes visible: the more he honors your separateness, the more intimacy is possible. Fusion loses its appeal, union gains authority. What draws him is not the fantasy of being completed but the encounter with a woman who is already whole. Power shifts from spectacle to serenity. Where drama once offered the thrill of intensity, calm now offers the deeper intoxication of trust. He grows uninterested in chasing states and obsessed with building conditions: sleep, order, prayer, movement, truth. He learns to love in boring ways that make beautiful things possible. The fireworks of early chemistry give way to candlelight, the kind that lasts, the kind you can read by, the kind that doesn't scorch when held close. It is not less passionate, it is more precise. And you, finally, you remember yourself without apology. The old reflex to audition for worth loosens its grip. External validation recedes like a tide, leaving the shore of real choice exposed. You choose your rituals without guilt, your friends without permission, your work without shrinking, your rest without justification. You stop translating your boundaries into softened versions so no one calls you cold. You live at your true temperature. Because you are no longer busy managing someone else's insecurity, your tenderness can come forward clean. The feminine in you is not a performance of sweetness, it is a sovereign current, gentle when chosen, fierce when needed, always sourced from within. Detachment becomes devotion's twin, not its enemy. You can hold and release in the same breath. You love without clinging. You bless without bargaining. You give without the secret invoice of resentment. In this climate, he continues his becoming, you continue yours, and the relationship becomes what good relationships have always been, not a destination but a practice. Two artisans, refining. Two pilgrims, walking. Two flames, bright on their own, warmer together, never choking each other of oxygen. This is the quiet victory the culture seldom celebrates, the romance that does not glitter loudly but glows relentlessly, the bond that does not parade but endures, the woman who rests in her earned peace and the man who protects that peace because he has finally learned how to protect his own. Call it alignment. Call it maturity. Call it soul. Whatever the name, the fruit is the same: freedom inside love. She doesn't need a stage, she needs a life.